This is the worst mistake you can make when you're Kegeling. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Tara. I'm a physical therapist and a yoga teacher, and today I'm going to teach you some common Kegel mistakes which can be helpful for anyone that is new to doing Kegels. So there are definitely a lot of common mistakes that people make when they are trying to do Kegels, and I want to make sure that you guys are not making these mistakes. To start, let's just review what a Kegel actually is. So a Kegel is a contraction of your pelvic floor muscles. So your pelvic floor is part of your core, and the muscles are a sling of muscles that support the bladder, they support the uterus in women and the prostate in men, and then they support the rectum. So these are really important muscles. I do have a whole video that I talk about what the pelvic floor is in more detail, so if you're interested in that, I'll link that down below. The point of doing a Kegel is to strengthen the pelvic floor muscles, and you can strengthen more toward the front, the urethra, or the back toward the anus, but keep in mind that the muscles are a continuous sling, so they are going to contract together, but you can put more emphasis on strengthening one versus the other depending what you're looking for. So how do you actually do a Kegel? I think the best way to describe performing a Kegel or a pelvic floor contraction is thinking about pulling the pelvic muscles up and in, and this contracts the pelvic floor. The best way to compare it that I find a lot of people understand is basically if you were thinking about if you were urinating and you want to stop the flow of urine, those are the muscles that you contract to do so, so that is in essence a Kegel. If you want to try this to feel how it feels to contract the pelvic floor muscles, I just would like to say that I only recommend trying this once. You don't want to make it a habit of strengthening your pelvic floor muscles by actually stopping the flow of urine, because this can lead to other bladder issues such as a UTI. So only try it once. And before we get into the common Kegel mistakes, I just want to say that not everyone needs to Kegel. With certain issues, it's actually not recommended to jump right into Kegel. And I do have a video where I talk about this in more detail already, so I'll link that down below for you as well. And remember, if you are having any issues, pelvic floor issues, to consult with your doctor. And I also highly recommend seeing a pelvic floor physical therapist to get a treatment plan that is specific to you. So I have 6 common Kegel mistakes to go over with you guys today, and I think all of them are really important things for you to know before you're trying to strengthen your pelvic floor. Number 1 is probably the most common mistake that people make, and that is holding your breath while you Kegel. So a lot of times when the pelvic floor is weak or when you have difficulty with muscle awareness in the pelvic floor, people tend to hold their breath when they're trying to contract the muscles, but you definitely do not want to do this. 1, it messes with your blood pressure, and 2, you're really not getting what you want out of the Kegel. So do not hold your breath. If you are trying to Kegel and you feel like you cannot inhale and exhale while you're holding your Kegel, what I recommend is then exhaling as you Kegel, so you might not be able to hold as long if you're not able to do the inhale and exhale. But to start, you'll inhale, and then as you Kegel, exhale, let the air out, and once your exhale is done, the Kegel's done. This is a good way to start doing Kegels if you're having difficulty coordinating the breath, and then as your muscles get stronger and you improve your body awareness, then you can move into being able to inhale and exhale while you're holding your Kegel. Mistake number 2 that a lot of people make is not holding the Kegels long enough. So a lot of times people will strengthen the pelvic floor by just contracting and relaxing, contracting and relaxing. And while that is a good exercise to really strengthen a majority of the pelvic floor muscles, you do need to hold your Kegel a little bit longer, and that's because most of the pelvic floor muscles are made up of slow twitch fibers, which means that they need to be able to hold for a longer duration as opposed to just doing quick contractions. The way I like to describe this is basically your pelvic floor muscles. So if you have, say, a really strong urge to urinate, you really need to go to the bathroom, your pelvic floor muscles will contract and tighten so that you can hold your urine in until you get into the bathroom onto the toilet. So if you think about it, if you only were able to hold those muscles in for about a second, then they would probably relax, and then you would probably pee your pants, which maybe is an issue that you're dealing with, but that's why it's important to do the longer holds, because you're kind of training these muscles to be able to hold in when you need them to. So typically I recommend people doing Kegels, so holding the Kegel, usually starting with 5 seconds. If you feel like the muscles are really weak, you might only want to do 2 or 3 seconds and work your way up, and then moving up until 10 seconds. For a max Kegel where you're contracting your pelvic floor basically to your maximum effort, I usually only do a max of 10 seconds. And remember, you're only holding as long as you can continue breathing, so not holding the breath. Mistake number 3 is probably the worst mistake that you can make when you're Kegeling, and that is bearing down instead of contracting. When you bear down, this is actually the opposite of strengthening the muscles. So when you Kegel, what you want is the muscles to contract and pull up and in. When you bear down, the opposite happens, so the muscles lengthen and kind of relax out. So that is an important motion because that's the motion. You know, the pelvic floor muscles, 1, they need to relax to urinate, and 2, you need to be able to do that bearing down motion to have a bowel movement. But if you're working on strengthening, you don't want to be bearing down because that's the opposite of what you're trying to accomplish. From my experience working as a pelvic floor physical therapist, this is relatively common that people think they are Kegeling and contracting the muscles, but they're actually doing the opposite. So that's why I do recommend seeing a pelvic floor physical therapist to assess and see if you're contracting the muscles correctly, because for some people it's really hard to tell on your own if you're doing it right. And definitely it is something I have relatively commonly seen working in the clinic, that people are bearing down instead of contracting, and I don't want that to be you, so that is something else to keep in mind. Mistake number 4 that can happen when Kegeling is squeezing your butt instead of squeezing your pelvic floor. And when I say squeezing your butt, I don't mean squeezing the rectal pelvic floor muscles. I mean you're literally squeezing your glutes, the external glutes. They're squeezing and tightening, and nothing's really happening in the pelvic floor. When this happens, usually the pelvic floor is either pretty weak, that you're using the glutes to try to compensate for the pelvic floor, or you just don't have that muscle body awareness of the pelvic floor to feel those muscles contract. But squeezing the butt is not doing a Kegel. Mistake number 5 is relatively common as well, and that's not fully relaxing your pelvic floor after you do your Kegel. So what you do is you Kegel, you kind of relax just a little bit, and then you Kegel again, and you're not doing that full relaxation. We really want to think about working the muscle through its full range, and if you never fully relax, you're kind of not working the muscle through its full range. And if you do this frequently enough and don't relax the pelvic floor, it is possible that this could lead to tightness in the pelvic floor muscles over time, or other pelvic issues, which we won't go into too much detail today. So just keep in mind, once you do your Kegel, make sure you do fully relax. Give yourself time to fully relax before you do your next Kegel. That's especially true if you're doing the quicker contractions. If you're doing the quick contractions, a lot of people just squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. You want to squeeze, relax. Squeeze, relax. Give yourself time to do that relaxation. Mistake number 6 is a combo of 2 mistakes, so it's either overdoing it on the Kegels or underdoing it on the Kegels. And what I mean by this is more the frequency or the amount that you do your Kegels. So we'll start with underdoing it. So if you have an issue where you are trying to really work on strengthening your pelvic floor and you only strengthen, you do your Kegels once a week, or you remember every once in a while to do your Kegels, it's pretty unlikely that you will make a significant change in your pelvic floor strength. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, which I have seen happen, is people overdoing their Kegels, constantly Kegeling all day long. Every time they think about it, they're trying to get some Kegels in. But keep in mind that the pelvic floor is a group of muscles, and it can be overworked like any other muscle in the body, so you can overdo it. And I want to give you guys a frequency that you should be Kegeling, but the truth is that everyone is different. So depending what you're dealing with, really the frequency, the reps that you're wanting to Kegel are going to be different for everybody. But for a general rule of thumb, I would say like max Kegels, I would not do more than 3 times a day of say 10 to 15 reps. Again, if you're dealing with a specific issue that you're using Kegels to help, consult with a pelvic floor physical therapist to really get a specific treatment plan to what you need. So those are your 6 common Kegel mistakes. I hope that was helpful for you guys. Again, I do recommend watching the video Should Everyone Kegel, because I think that'll give you more information on if you should be strengthening your pelvic floor. I also have a yoga flow that works on pelvic floor strengthening, which I will link below for you guys as well. But that is all I have for you guys today. If you're not already subscribed to my channel, please hit that subscribe button right below me, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye guys.